Oh, good day today. What are we going to do today? Well, we're going to talk about clauses. What is a clause? That is the question we want to be able to answer by the end of this lesson. And the first thing I want to make sure you understand is the learning objective. What are we going to do today? What is it that I expect you to be able to do to me, to demonstrate to me, to prove to me that you understand what is going on here? Well, you need to be able to distinguish, first off, between a clause and a phrase. What is the difference between a clause? What is a phrase? If I give you examples of things, could you say, oh, that's a clause, Mr. Sanchez, or oh, that's a phrase, Mr. Sanchez? You have to be able to show me. You will then you'll have to be able to not only locate a clause and determine if it is a subordinate or an independent. You have to be able to do those things. So there's a lot of stuff to do today, and we got to get going on it. So the first question is, what is a clause? Well, let me go back for a second. This learning objective is going to be your lifeline. Because the way this works is very simple. Mr. Sanchez is going to come around, Liliana, and ask you, what is today's learning objective? Paraphrase it for me. Give it to me in your own words. Summarize it to a degree. What is it that we're going to learn today? And if you are not able to give me the key things, you're going to be doing push-ups. However, if you are able to give me the learning objective in a proper way, I'm going to be doing push-ups. So it's you or me. Make sure that you're learning what we're doing today. Make sure that you understand. There'll be questions as we go. So make sure you pay attention. All right, so first thing, we want to make sure we understand what a clause is. A clause is a word group that contains a verb and its subject. So contains a verb and subject. Now this is a change from our wonderful phrase, because phrase was a verb or a subject. In this case, verb and a subject. Now, one of the things you're going to have to understand is it could be an actual sentence. So a normal sentence, that's a clause. Or it could be part of a sentence, and that's where it gets tricky. So right away, hopefully, you guys have already kind of gotten a hint that, if it's an actual sentence, it's probably what we call independent, right? Because we don't need anybody else. We can stand on our own. We are our own person. But if it's part of a sentence, well, that's probably most likely going to be a subordinate. So that kind of gives a little hint right away on those two things. But I need you to make sure that you understand a couple things. One, it is a word that contains both a verb and its subject. If you do not get that, you're in trouble right away. So that's the first thing, because a clause is very different than the other thing that we've talked about. And we know that just from that sense. So let's see here. Let's shrink this guy down a little bit and move him off to the side. Keep that there, because you definitely want to know your learning objective. Again, if I ask you, you cannot look at your board. I'm going to close your iPad for a second and make you answer that question. So I'd practice that a little bit more time. And then I'd also make sure that when Mr. Sanchez goes, what is a clause? You're all, oh, Mr. Clause, that's something that's a word group that contains a verb and a subject. I don't need to know about the sentence or part sentence. You might need, you don't want to know that, but that's not what's important right now. Right now, you need to make sure that you understand that. Now, we talk about phrases, right? So if I talk about a phrase, we've already said phrase can only have a verb. Or, there's a big or there, it's subject. Or a subject, right? One or the other. It cannot have both. And we just taught you the beautiful thing called a clause. And we said that clause can have the subject, well, not can, must have the subject and the verb. So the phrase over here, it's only seen with one key component. This one here has two. So if it were to fight, I'm going to guess that the clause wins because it's got more. Yeah, just a little fun way to look at it. So keep that in mind. All right, so right here, here's some of the wonderful little examples, right? And what we're doing here is, those are examples of clauses. Because right away, what I want to look for is some simple things. One, his writing. Do we have a verb? Yeah, writing, right? Writing is my verb. Who's writing? His. There's my subject. So this has a subject plus a verb. We have a clause. Down here, dog bark. Barked is my verb. What barked? Dog barked. There's my subject verb. We have a clause. Wanted, she, subject verb, clause. So those are clauses. Now, what we have to take into account is when they are not clauses, what happens? Let's move you over to the side here. spin you. Whoa, throw you over there. All right. I'm having way too much fun with this. So now let me give you some examples of non-clauses. Here are examples of non-clauses. By the shore. Dancing leaf. What did the dancing leaf do? The girl in the dress. What about the girl in the dress, right? There's a subject in most cases, but there's no verb. Now, the one that some of you might get tripped up on is the dancing leaf. Well, if you remember earlier, dancing is describing leaf, so dancing is actually a participle. So these are non-clauses because they don't have both a subject and a verb. That means they're no-nos. They have to have them both to be able to do it. I'm going to give you some sentences. I want to see how you do, but first off, I'm going to write the steps for you here in a moment, the keys to success. But let's first thing, before we do anything, let's shrink him and slide him over this way. Oh, yeah, I'm going to put him upside down like that because I'm having too much fun. Make you challenge yourselves a little bit. Here's your steps. Make sure you listen because some of you aren't listening and you don't know them. I will be questioning you every once in a while, and you better make sure you know these. Push-ups possibly again. The steps to success are 1, read the sentence carefully. 2, label your subject and verb. Always find all of them. Find your prepositions. Make sure that you find the object of the preposition so that you can eliminate prepositional phrases. And last but not least, you're going to go ahead and find all of your adjectives, adverbs, and articles. Let's see what you can do here. So read them all carefully, right? So read the first one. He lives here. Is there a subject and a verb? Let's take a look. Subject, verb. Now, what I forgot to tell you about the steps to success is very important. Right here, at this point, I'm actually done. That's all I have to do, those 2 steps to find subjects, or sorry, we're not looking for subjects, to find my phrases versus my clause. So once I say, okay, find my label and subject and verb, he lives here. Okay, well, there's my subject and my verb. Do I have both my subject and verb? Yes, I do. That's a clause. The brown, ugly dog. Well, what's this about? It's about a dog. What did the dog do? Don't know. So it only has a subject. That's a phrase. Okay? So try the next 3 on your own. Remember, you must be able to tell me who or what, and then what happened? What did that person or thing do? Make sure you know those, okay? Good luck. I will give you time. Make sure you do your best. Come show me when you're done, or tell me. All right. As we already indicated, today our learning objective up here in the corner is that we are going to be able to distinguish between clauses and phrases, which we've already done, and you've done a good job. Now you have to be able to just find and locate a clause and determine if it is a subordinate or an independent clause. So that's what we're going to be doing right now. We're going to take this, and we're going to do this little thing right here, right now. Is it independent or is it subordinate? Let's find out. Well, the thing we've got to realize for these is very simple. What is an independent clause? What is a subordinate clause? So we come down here, say, okay, well, what is an independent clause? An independent clause are simply stated as simple sentences that can be by themselves. They can hang out by themselves. It's all messed up here. There we go. And subordinate clauses are dependent clauses, or dependent clauses, you'll hear them both ways, must have an independent clause attached to it to complete the sentence. Otherwise it's a fragment, as we've come to know and love. So when we do this, the big thing with subordinate clauses is that they always start with a subordinating conjunction. And that is very important, because once we find subordinating conjunctions, you'll find independent clauses. They always have a subordinating conjunction. So subordinating conjunctions. Subordinating conjunctions, right over here. And what these are is a common list of them. This is a list of most of the common ones. If you see one of these in a sentence, most likely you have a subordinating conjunction, which means you're going to have a subordinating clause. Remember, clauses must have a subject and verb, so you'll see before we went, after we ate. Any of those type of things, those are subordinating clauses, but they must start with one of these. If it doesn't have one of these, it is not, and these are just the common ones. There's some others, but these are the most common. So if it doesn't have a subordinate conjunction, it is not going to be a subordinating clause. Very important. That's the easiest thing to remember. Here's our sentence. Beth walked to the store after we ate dinner. Now, what we were looking for again is subjects and verbs. So what is our, we read the sentence, now we do our subject and verbs. We have walked as our verb, Beth is a subject, ate is a verb, we is a subject. And then you go and you find all those other wonderful things, prepositions and so forth and so on. So here's our preposition, here's our prepositional phrase, here's our direct object. But what is this right here? Well, if you look up here, right, after, that is a subordinating conjunction. So I know that this is a subordinating conjunction. And because of subordinating conjunction, that this right here, because it has a subject and a verb, is a clause. And I know that this is a subordinating clause or dependent. And this one up here doesn't start with one of these, so this makes this an independent clause. And that's what you're going to be doing. You're just going to be locating subordinating conjunctions to find subordinating clauses and subject and verbs to determine whether it's a clause or a phrase. Go ahead and do these two sentences. Label them, take your time, and do them right. And let's see how you did. Once you have it done, come, show me, and make sure that you get your point for the day. Great job today. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and give you some book work now that you've passed that. So come see me and we'll get you started on your assignment.